All right, Vikings fans, this is one of those conversations that's just too fun to ignore. Training camp is getting closer, the roster is almost set, but what if the front office decided to make one more big move before the season kicks off? Some of these ideas might sound a little crazy, some might actually make a lot of sense, and a couple could completely change the outlook for this team. So stick around, because we're breaking down every possibility and figuring out which ones are worth dreaming about, and which ones should probably stay just that, dreams. Before we get started, make sure to hit that like button if you're ready for football season and let me know in the comments, SKOL all day, if you believe this team has what it takes to make a serious run this year. Something interesting is happening around the Minnesota Vikings as training camp gets closer. And while none of these scenarios are being presented as predictions, they do offer a fascinating look at the kind of bold conversations that could happen behind the scenes if Minnesota ever decided to make one last aggressive move before the regular season begins. The Vikings appear comfortable with their current roster, and the expectation is that they will likely stand pat. But imagining how a few blockbuster additions could completely reshape this football team is hard to ignore. The first name that immediately grabs everyone's attention is Maxx Crosby. Even after all the recent trade speculation surrounding him, he remains one of the premier edge rushers in the NFL and one of the league's most respected locker room leaders. If the Raiders were ever willing to listen, acquiring Crosby would almost certainly require 2 first-round draft picks. Maybe there is a scenario where a first and a second-round selection starts the conversation, but realistically, Las Vegas would likely demand far more for a player of his caliber. From a football standpoint, the fit is almost impossible to argue against. Pairing Maxx Crosby with Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel could give Minnesota, arguably, the most dangerous edge-rushing trio in the entire NFL. Expectations are already high for Turner entering what many believe could become his breakout season, while Van Ginkel continues to prove his value despite what some considered a quieter year, after still producing 7 sacks and making a major impact in pass coverage. Adding Crosby would also create more flexibility for Brian Flores' defensive scheme, allowing Van Ginkel to spend more snaps operating as an off-ball linebacker rather than lining up exclusively on the edge. That versatility alone could create countless matchup problems for opposing offenses. Crosby's production speaks for itself. Recording 28 tackles for loss in just 15 games is an extraordinary number, averaging nearly 2 tackles for loss every week, while adding 20 quarterback hits and 10 sacks highlights exactly why he continues to rank among the league's elite defenders. Beyond the statistics, his leadership, toughness, and relentless playing style make him the type of player every organization wants inside its locker room. Still, there is another side to this discussion. Minnesota's long-term timeline may simply not align with paying such a massive price. Giving away 2 first-round picks would undoubtedly make the Vikings better immediately, but it would also place enormous pressure on the roster to deliver postseason success right away. If the team were to improve but still fall short with an early playoff exit, those missing first-round selections would become extremely painful, especially considering concerns about organizational depth following several underwhelming draft classes in recent years. The financial commitment cannot be overlooked either. Acquiring Crosby would mean taking on a significant contract while sacrificing premium draft capital at the same time. It's the type of blockbuster move that creates excitement instantly, but it also carries major long-term risk if everything doesn't break perfectly. The second trade idea feels considerably more realistic, and it involves Arizona Cardinals safety Budda Baker. Baker has built his reputation as one of the NFL's most versatile defensive backs. He can patrol deep coverage, play near the line of scrimmage, drop into the slot, and consistently makes plays because of his instincts and football intelligence. If Arizona ever decided to reset its competitive timeline by moving established veterans, Baker could become an intriguing target for Minnesota. One interesting aspect of this possibility is that safety has never been a position where Brian Flores absolutely needed superstar talent to succeed. Time after time, Flores has developed overlooked players into productive contributors. However, adding someone with Baker's proven ability would instantly elevate the secondary. Instead of relying entirely on younger options, Minnesota would suddenly have a true difference-maker capable of impacting every level of the defense. Financially, the deal appears manageable. Baker's current contract would carry significant cap numbers over the next 2 seasons, but there could be flexibility to restructure portions of the deal and reduce the immediate burden. If the asking price truly landed around a 4th-round draft pick, that becomes a conversation worth having because the value could significantly outweigh the cost. Now it's your turn. Out of these first 2 trade ideas, which one would you actually want to see the Vikings pursue? Would you swing big for Max Crosby despite the enormous price, or would Budda Baker be the smarter addition? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because the remaining trade ideas get even more interesting. The next proposal shifts the focus from the defensive front to the secondary once again. And this time, the spotlight falls on Cleveland Browns cornerback Denzel Ward. Before the offseason began, cornerback looked like one of the positions many believed Minnesota absolutely needed to upgrade. However, after several roster additions, that urgency has changed. There is growing confidence in the current cornerback group. The addition of James Pierre, combined with the selection of Charles Demings, has strengthened the room enough that an argument can now be made that the Vikings possess one of the better cornerback groups in the NFC North, and possibly one of the stronger units across the NFC as a whole. Even so, adding a player like Denzel Ward would immediately push the defense into another category. Ward continues to be viewed as one of the NFL's premier shutdown cornerbacks. His ability to erase opposing receivers would fit naturally into Brian Flores's aggressive defensive philosophy. Having a defender capable of consistently winning one-on-one matchups would create even more opportunities for Flores to dial up creative blitz packages and pressure opposing quarterbacks. The challenge, once again, comes down to cost. Ward carries a significant contract over the next 2 seasons, with cap hits around $17 million annually through 2026 and 2027. While Minnesota would receive 2 seasons of team control, the expectation is that any team acquiring him would eventually have to discuss another contract extension before long. On top of taking on that financial commitment, the Vikings would likely need to surrender a 3rd-round draft pick to complete the deal. There is no question that Ward would improve the defense immediately. In fact, combining him with the current defensive core could realistically give Minnesota one of the league's elite defensive units. But every aggressive move forces the front office to balance present-day championship aspirations against long-term roster building. And that calculation becomes increasingly difficult with every premium contract that is added. The 4th trade idea is one that generated more laughs than serious debate, bringing Garrett Bradbury back to Minnesota. The Vikings already appear to have one of the strongest offensive lines they have fielded in years. With 2 outstanding tackles and 2 highly respected guards, the only real uncertainty entering the season centers on the center position. Even with that question mark, there is still confidence that Blake Brandel can handle the job, making this offensive line one that many believe continues to be underrated across the league. Much of that optimism also depends on Christian Darrisaw returning fully healthy and playing at the elite level fans have already seen from him. If that happens, Minnesota's offensive line could become one of the team's greatest strengths. Because of that, the idea of trading to bring Bradbury back simply doesn't create much excitement. Instead, there is actually more anticipation surrounding the possibility of facing him. If Bradbury lines up for Chicago, There is genuine curiosity about how Minnesota's young defensive linemen could perform against him. The thought of players like Jalen Redmond and rookie Cale Banks creating constant pressure in that matchup is far more appealing than pursuing a reunion. Bradbury could certainly benefit from playing alongside one of the league's best guards in Joe Thuney, potentially helping stabilize Chicago's offensive line. The Bears also drafted another interior offensive lineman, giving them additional flexibility if they ever considered moving Bradbury. Even so, this remains one of the least convincing trade ideas discussed. The final proposal circles back to Arizona with edge rusher Josh Sweat. Unlike the blockbuster scenario involving Max Crosby, Sweat represents a player who could realistically become available depending on how Arizona's season develops. Whether before the season or closer to the trade deadline, his name stands out because of one simple trait: consistent pass-rushing production. Year after year, Sweat has shown the ability to pressure quarterbacks and produce around double-digit sack totals when given the opportunity. Durability also strengthens his value, having missed only 2 games over the last 4 seasons. Availability is one of the most underrated qualities for any pass rusher, and Sweat has consistently answered the bell. For Minnesota, the logic is easy to understand. Even with optimism surrounding Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel, another reliable edge defender would make an already dangerous pass rush even more difficult for opposing offenses to handle. Brian Flores thrives when he has multiple players capable of generating pressure from different alignments, and Sweat fits that style perfectly. Looking across all 5 trade possibilities, 2 names clearly stand above the rest as the most realistic and appealing fits. Budda Baker offers versatility, leadership, and immediate impact in the secondary without requiring overwhelming draft compensation. Josh Sweat provides another proven pass rusher who could strengthen an already talented defensive front while carrying far less risk than an expensive blockbuster. Meanwhile, Max Crosby remains the dream scenario that would instantly elevate the defense, but would also require an enormous investment in both draft capital and salary. Denzel Ward presents an intriguing possibility, but comes with significant financial considerations, while a Garrett Bradbury reunion simply feels unnecessary, given Minnesota's current direction. As training camp approaches, the expectation remains that the Vikings will likely stay patient rather than making a major splash. The roster already appears to be in a strong position, and the front office may prefer to evaluate the team through the opening weeks of the season before considering any significant additions. Still, exploring these possibilities highlights just how close Minnesota may believe it is to becoming a legitimate contender. Sometimes one move can change everything, but sometimes the smartest decision is trusting the roster already in place. Now I want to hear from every Vikings fan watching. Which of these 5 trade ideas would you actually make? And is there another player around the NFL that you think Minnesota should target instead? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this discussion, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest Vikings news, rumors, and analysis. SKOL.